Mario,
Hello.
good morning.
Hey, how are you?
Baruch Hashem, how you doing?
Good? Good?
Good. All right,
Just
so we finished off with Menachos,
no, we have to do no Chullin 10.
and Menachos, you finished?
Well, he has half a page, so I don't know if maybe he'll do it today.
Uh,
Maybe.
okay.
Always when we finish one and we are not completely finished, he starts the new one, and then second he does
Yeah,
the.
yeah, yeah. No, no, I know. Yeah. Okay.
It's here. Still cold? Hey,
Sorry?
the weather's still cold?
Still cold. Well, it's
Hmm.
warming up, but it's
Oh, that's
in the
good.
yeah, in the evenings it gets cold,
Yeah.
but it's still okay. Good.
Okay. So I don't know who is here and cannot connect. Oh, Jorge.
Buenas noches, amigo. ¿Cómo estás?
Bien, ¿cómo está usted?
Benny.
Bien. Trágicamente no siempre capaz de poder juntarme con ustedes, pero continuando y haciendo mi DAF todo el tiempo.
Ok, estamos en el 10,
Sí, eso me imaginé.
pero claro, todavía falta medio del anterior. No sé si lo va a hacer hoy o mañana.
El del 9:30.
No, no, del Menajas,
Ah, el 109.
710.
Sí,
No sé si lo va a hacer hoy o mañana, quizás.
ok, cuando él quiera. ¿Y
That's
tú, Cal, qué
true.
tal has estado, amigo?
Muy bien, muy bien. Festejando con mis hijas el Día de la Madre.
Nosotros aquí también con mi hija,
Very good. ¿Cuántos hijos tiene usted? ¿Una hija?
una hija y un hijo,
Oh, okay.
uno y uno.
That's good.
Y tengo nietos, una nena y un nene.
Sí, ya los veo las fotos que usted pone para llaves. Very cute.
Gracias, gracias. Es una gran bendición,
Yeah,
la bendición más grande que el Dios nos da.
sí. Es increíble cuando uno los tiene, siente diferente que como con los hijos, ¿no?
Mucho, una gran
Ajá.
diferencia.
Yeah,
¿Sabes qué? No los estás educando, los estás, es solamente para quererlos.
sí.
Okay, we are on
Con intent, ¿no?
Daf Yud.
Ujú.
On the bottom of 9b, Amr Yishua ben Levi, Matam. We say that if you walk into a room and there's a cup of water which is uncovered, we say that the water is tame. But if you had a cup that was previously covered and you walk in, it's not tame, it's just puzzle. Why? Yud Amid Aleph, Mibnei Shadarkan Shul Srotzim Legalois. It's very common for a rodent to knock the top off of a cup, but vein darkan lechasis, but they're not going to be able to cover it. a cup. So if you find a cup of water that had previously been covered and now is uncovered, it's a sheretz that did it, and not because the majority of the time that can happen. It doesn't have to be a tummy person that did it. But if a cup that was previously uncovered is found to be covered, you have to assume that a tummy person covered it, and therefore that's why it's tummy. Or inami tama dinicha megula ba mitzvah mechusa. If a person left a cup uncovered and later came back covered, that's the first case. That's why it's tummy. Mechusa ba umitzvah megula. If it was covered, now it's uncovered, that's the second case. But if you came in and you saw exactly the way you left it, hamotza kamashi nicha, so lo tumeika v'lo psulika. There's no, it doesn't become tummy, it doesn't become invalid. What we're trying to prove is that suffix sakana is worse than suffix isser.
Okay. Yeah, but I can't talk in your driveway. Your
Walter,
parents.
Walter, you have to.
I'm muting, don't worry.
Ilu suffix
I'm
minor.
trying to mute.
If a suffix, whether water was uncovered, then we treat that stringently because it's sakana. And yet, in the case of isser, whether it's tum or not, we leave, even though it's a suffix, we leave it alone. Shema mino chamira sakanta misura. We treat sakana worse than isser, more stringent. Tanan also. We talked about that if you leave water uncovered, you're not allowed to drink it because we assume that the snake has deposited venom.
Yeah, I'm giving you all my prizes.
Walter, you have to mute that. Tanan also, gimel mashkin asur mishum gilui. There are three kind of beverages that are prohibited. Mayim, yayin, cholov. Water, wine, milk. Kama yishuv yuasurin. How long must they be uncovered for them to be prohibited? Kedei sheyetze arachash v'mokem kor v'yishteh. So that the snake will come out from wherever it's hiding and drink from it. What is that place? Kama mokem karov. Ari Yizuk by Rav Yehuda kedei sheyetze mitachas oizen kli v'yishteh. It might be hiding under the handle of the kli. So it's very close. So the Gemara says, Yishte al-kachazi lay. If the person sees it, fine. But we're talking about even if you don't know, you can't drink it. There has to be enough time for the snake to come from wherever it's hiding and go back to its hiding place. Otherwise, there's no chiddush, because if you see the snake, you're certainly not going to drink from it. Itma. Hashoichet besakin v'nimtzeit peguma. You shechted with a knife that had a nick in it. Now, when you shecht with a knife with a nick, it tears rather than cuts. Aruna, afilu shibe brought someone's kolayom, even after you did the shchita, you used the same knife to break up bones. The initial, and only then you discover that it has a nick, we say that the shchita is psula. Chayshinan shema ba'or nifkama. We're concerned that when he went to shecht the animal, the knife became nicked as it went through the skin of the animal. Rav Chizda Amar Ksheira, the initial shechita is okay. We assume that the knife got nicked by the bone that you chopped. Shema be'atzam nifkama. Bishma Rav Huna kishmaitze. I understand Rav Huna is consistent with what he said before about chazaka, that the animal is becheskas isra as aver menachai, And it's left as a prohibited thing until you can prove that it was shechted correctly. El Rav Chisda my time. Why does Rav Tama permit? Armelacha, because we know that when you use a knife to chop bones, etzem vaday poikim. We know a bone is going to make a nick, but the skin or suffik poikim, suffik lo poikim. We don't know for sure that the hide of the cow is going to nick the knife. So you have a vaday poigim with the bone and a suffik poigim with the hide. Ha suffik vaday ve'ein suffik motzei b'dei vaday. The suffik cannot take out from the case of the vaday. Mosif rava l'siyula ravuna. Tavel v'olav anim salav davar chotzis. Somebody went into the mikveh to be mitar himself. He comes out, he has a stick of gum connected to his skin. Aval pishnisazik posramin kolayim kulo. He was chewing gum all day. Lo also lo tvila. Ad sheyomer borili shlohaya alay kodim lachem. He does not become torn unless he knows for sure that whatever sticky was not on his body before he went in. Now, we know for sure he went in the mikveh. The question is, Sofik havi alei, Sofik lo havi alei. Maybe the sticky thing was on him, maybe it wasn't. Yet we say the tefillah is not good. Kasi Sofik, vadai, which is against what Rav Chisda said. Shiny Hossam, you have a Tamei person. He's trying to be mitar himself. You have a suffix. You leave the Tamei person Tamei until you have evidence that it was a perfectly good tefillah. Ve'em aloi tov. So the Gemara says, Ochanami, where when you shechted with a knife, and then you didn't check the knife, and you chop bones. Later on, you find that it was nicked. Hamid behema al cheskasa. The behema should remain in a prohibited state because before you shechted it, you're not allowed to eat a live animal. It's Ever min achai. The aimer loy nishchad, and we don't know for sure that the shechita was a good one. So the Gemara says, "Harei shchutel fanecha." What do you mean? Look at the animal it's geshechted. The meat should be good. Well, hachanami harei tov fanecha. In the case of the mikvah, the person went into the mikvah. So the Gemara says, yeah, but ha'isyalde be'reusa. But when he came out, he had a stick of gum on his skin. So there was something that made it weakening the chazaka. Well, the Gemara says, ochanami isyalde be'reusa. Here, by the shechita cases also, the knife has been nicked. Now, here comes the distinguishing point. Sakin Isroi. Yeah. The Sakin had a problem, but Behema lo Isroi. But there is no defect in the Behema. So, and you have a geshechted animal in front of you. So we say that the shechita is good. And in the case of the tefillah, the gum was on his body at the time when he came out, so we can't assume that the tefillah was good. Meisvei. Shochat esaveshet. Now, by a bird, we've learned by an animal, like a cow, a sheep, a goat, you need to shecht both the trachea and the esophagus, 51%. Those are the two simonim. A bird only needs one simon, and you only need 51%. So, shochat esaveshet, you shechted the esophagus. Then the trachea becomes dislocated from the jaw, torn away. Kshera, because at the time that you cut the esophagus, the trachea was still in place. And therefore the shechita is good. But if nishmata gargeres, if the trachea became dislocated, and then achakach shochat esaveshet, then psula, you shechted a treifa animal, because a dislocated trachea is something that would trafe the animal. Now, Shochat is a veset, v'nimtzak ger shmuta. It's a suffix case. You shech the esophagus, and you find, now that when you inspect it, that the trachea is dislocated, and you don't know. Any yodeim kodim shchita nishmita. Did the trachea come dislodged before you cut the esophagus? Im la'achar shchita nishmita. V'zaya ma'aseh v'amru. This case was discussed in front of the Dayanim, and they answered, kol suffix b'shchita pasul. They said, if there's a suffix when the trachea became dislocated, we assume that it might have occurred before the shchita, and we treif the bird. Now, kol suffix b'shchita lasui mai. When the Brisa talked about a suffix b'sik, what are we talking about? Lav lasui b'hai gavna. Our case about the knife, and it got a nick, and we're not sure, did the nick happen when while you were shechting, when you cut the hide, or did it happen after? So the Gemara says that's not what's being included. Lasui suffix shah suffix doras. The suffix is, did he press too hard? Did he pause? So that would invalidate. But we would go like Rav Chisda, that if you find the knife nicked, Rav Chisda says it's okay. Maishna, what's the difference in lomdus between if there's a doubt whether you pressed or paused versus there's a dite in the knife? When you press or pause, you're damaging the animal. The reisa, the defect in the chazaka is happening in the animal itself. So therefore we say, even though you have a geshechted animal in front of you, the reisa has been weakened, and therefore we say it's not kosher. Hacha, with the knife, sakin is rebeim lo isri. The knife has developed a problem, not the animal. So the animal does not become forbidden. How does the Gemara paskin? We're talking about the case where you shechted an animal, you didn't check the knife, you then chopped some bones, and then later on discovered that the knife had a nick. If you check the knife and it has a nick, and the guy did not use the knife on bones, then we assume that the knife got a nick when you cut the hide. Therefore, when you cut through the trach and the esophagus, you tore it. And therefore, you don't have a kosher shechita. However, if after you shechted with a knife, which was inspected beforehand, which was clean, then you did the shechita, and then you chopped some bones, and then you checked the knife, it's a nick. There we assume that the shechita is good, and then the knife got its nick when you chopped the bones. Michlal de Rav Chisda, avagav de lo shiber ba'etza. According to Rav Chisda, it would seem that the shechita would be good even if he didn't use the knife for bones. El b'mayivkim. How would Rav Chisda explain how did the knife get nicked if he didn't chop bones? And for the Gemara, ema be'etzem de mafrekas ifkim. When you shecht a cow or a sheep or even a bird, the trachea is cut first, then the esophagus. Then behind the trachea and the esophagus is the spinal column. So the knife, if you press hard enough, is going to hit the bone behind the trachea and the esophagus. Well, that only happened after you went through the esophagus and the trachea. So Rav Chisda will say the knife got nicked on the neck bone. Okay. Have uvda. There was a case where a guy shechted 10 animals in a row. Now, we would not advise that. We would advise that the knife be checked after each shechita to make sure that it's not nicked. But a person shechted 10 animals, they inspected it before the first shechita, and then at the end of the 10th shechita, They inspected it. They found a nick. Havi uvda v'tarf Rav Yosef ad placer chayvisa. 13 animals were slaughtered, and he trafed up 13. Now, kiman, kiravuna v'afilim kamaisa. So that means in total they shechted 13, and Rav Yosef trafed all 13. That means since they found after the second inspection a nick in the knife, they assumed that the nick was there even at the first shechita, just like Rav Huna said. So the Gemara says, "Lo, Rav Chisda lubar mikamaisa." He holds like Rav Chisda, and the first one is okay. V'boy seim lolim kravuna, and all of them have become treif. And the Gemara thinks that this last understanding is correct. The Rav Chisda, if Rav Yosef is going to go like Rav Chisda, michte mitla talina. You'd have to say, why would the first one be okay? It has a nick, because it cut the neck bone after he cut the esophagus and the trachea of the first animal. But how do you know that? How do you know it got damaged on the neck bone of the first animal? Maybe it was damaged by the last animal. Maybe everything should be kosher. But we know that Rav Yosef didn't, he forbade more than he permitted. So clearly he's following Rav Huna. Okay, we accept that. Rav Ashi. Rav Gana Matrich B'digusa ben Kol Chada V'Chada. He required inspection of the knife between each animal that you shech. Kiman Kiravu Nola Mifsal Kamaisa. That if you didn't do an inspection, even the first one is not good. The Gemara says, look, Rav Chisda Lachshir Basraisa. That the last animal would be okay if you inspected it before. We know there's a rule that the shechita knife has to be taken to the Talmid Chacham of the city. Why don't you do that? So we have a rule, because when it comes to Isser v'Heter, one person is enough. You don't need two eidim. Then why do we ever send it to the Chacham? It's nothing to do. It was just the covet for the Talmid Chacham. But as long as the regular person checked it and it remains unnicked, the other shchitas will be okay. Now, we've been learning all along that once something has chazaka, you don't change the chazaka unless you know for sure that something's happened to change it. Where is this principle derived that you leave something in the status of what it is? When a Kohen comes to a house to inspect the house for tsaras, he has to leave the house El Pesach Habayis to the entrance for his Giras Habayis. Shivas Yom, he has to close up the house for 7 days. Dilmad in Nafik for us, so maybe as he's going out of the house, Botzer Le Shiura, the tsaras is now smaller than the shear. He saw it at the proper shear, and you leave it in the chazaka that it has tsaras. So here's the proof. Maybe he walked backwards and he's inspecting the house the whole time because he saw it. That won't work. Stay truvas bedavar. Walking out backwards is not called going out. And number two, what about behind the door? The Kohen can't even see that. Maybe as he's going out, he opens up a new window. If it's a dark house, you can't put windows in. So therefore, we do see this case as a source for chazak. Armalei Rav. That which you said, walking out backwards is not going out. What do you mean? When the Kohen Gadol walks backwards out of the Kodesh Kadoshim, he backs out. It says Yotza Uvolo Utnan Derech Knisoso. He walks out the same way he comes in, and it's still called Yitzia. Number two, Udikamid Bayis Off-Lane Personal Bechol Nigo, a dark house, you don't open up a window. There's no chazak of tzaras established. This chazik is chazik. You could. You want to make sure it stays the same shear. However, tani lo kravacha bar Yaakov. V'yatza koim min abayis. Yachol yelech l'soch beis of Yazgir. I would think that he has to close off that house. Tamadomer el pesach habayis. He has to first go to the door. Pesach habayis. Yachol yama tachas amashka v'yazgir. Maybe he'll stand in the lintel, right between the doorway, and close it up. Tamadomer min abayis. He has to leave. How does he do it? He stands right outside the lintel and closes it off. If he went to his own house and closed the tzaras house, or he closed it off in standing in the tzaras house, it's considered a good closing off. No matter how you close it, it works. So that kasha is on Rav Acha bar Yaakov. How does Rav Acha bar Yaakov explain it? We'll learn that tomorrow. Now, I'm teaching the Navi in a half hour. So that way we're going to leave we have another half blood of Menachos. We'll do that tomorrow when all we have to do is Daf Yomi. We don't have another shear afterwards.
Okay.
See everybody in a half hour.